just going to resume this so we can take minutes a little bit easier, but I'll be able to do the bike recap pretty easily. We may not get a quorum today, but that's okay. I'll just quickly run through this kind of softball agenda item here. Bike to Work Day was good this year. You know, it felt a little bit more like 2019 this year than it did the previous kind of COVID years. So just as a reminder, we supported 4 stations with in-person staff this year, which is quite a bit. Most TMAs only do 1 or 2. Tour to Thornton jokes. Yep. It was good. I promise, Jason. And there were 250 plus riders supported at kind of all of our stations across the North Metro. The bulk of those happen kind of at this southern station right along the Platte in the morning with Adams County. And then we get kind of some smaller neighborhood crowds at North Glen, Denver Premium Outlets, and then the baseline community up north. We had roughly 8 sponsors of food and drink. That's an important kind of component. People are looking for food, and we need sponsors for that. So spent a lot of time doing that and typically do. That was nice this year. And then countless lays distributed. I'll tell you what that means here in just a second. In Adams County this year, we decided to theme the station. Kudos to Danielle and Jesse from Adams County, who came up with this idea of doing kind of a Hawaiian theme at our station, which sounds goofy, but it ended up being really fun. We had some little picture things, some lays you'll see pictured here, nice grass skirts. We had a big yogurt kind of fruit bar here showcased on the bottom where people could build their own little yogurt bar. It was really fun to just get into the theme. There we are with our little signs and things and some riders with their lays. We were having people come from all over asking to get a lay. Not that we need people to come by our station, but it's a nice showcase for Adams County, and it was a lot of fun. I'll just some more pictures here. This is North Glen in the morning station. Here's Tammy on our team with Starbucks and some North Glen staff. We had a lot of great sponsors at this station and do every year. Some bikes here on the left showing, and then this little Bike to Work Day sign I'll quickly point out was something that our team made. Catherine and Danielle worked hard to make these kind of custom signs that were they're what we're called guerrilla marketing tactics. So we saw a need for there to be signs like days and weeks leading up to Bike to Work Day at the station where they would be, to capture those riders that were maybe riding by once or twice to think, oh, I should come here on Wednesday morning for Bike to Work Day because I typically ride this way. I'll just kind of make an adjustment in my schedule and come by. Not 100% sure how those worked out, but they were fun to use, and we think they're something we'll do next year. Pretty low lift beyond the first year, I think. And we just tell parks, hey, please don't pull these up or steal them, and we're pretty good. So those were fun to put out, and we think they might be helpful for years moving forward. And then there's one of Catherine's daughters holding a donut, very cute. Here's Tammy at our baseline station. So 2 new stations in the afternoon, kind of bike home stations this year, which are a little bit harder than the breakfast stations. It's just people disperse. It's not quite as energetic in the afternoon. So baseline, thank you to you for bringing out some pizza, some swag items. I think you had 5 or 10 riders that kind of stopped by there, and it's a good start, right? We try to get these stations started every year. That's part of our mission through the DRCOG partnership, is to get new stations up and running and then eventually hand them off to them to run, and we can run off and do new ones. So this is one of our new stations we tried out this year up at Baseline, and it's, as you can see, it's right along the trail, but as things build out more and more, it'll become more and more popular. Same thing here on the left at Denver Premium Outlets. I think we'll think about moving the station probably next year away from the inside of the shopping to the outside. It just made sense this year to keep it there, but we got some pretty strong comments that it was hard to find us. So got some work to do there, but it was a nice, first start to get out there. And then on the right, I just wanted to highlight, we repurposed the posters from Bike to Work Day into thank you cards, and we send those around to all of our sponsors and kind of handwrite those. We've delivered all those to our folks from anywhere from Starbucks all the way to Adams County that helped us make Bike to Work Day a success this year. So that's it for Bike to Work Day. We were happy with this year. It was fun, and enjoyed kind of getting out there. The next really the meat of the agenda today is going to be 3 grant application updates. So I'll just pause if there's any comments or questions about Bike Tour, Bike to Work Day before I get into the meat.
Was it the same number that you've seen over the last several years? Are we getting bigger again, or what's happening?
Yeah, It's getting a little bigger. I don't think it's crazy bigger. So just from a regional perspective, there used to be roughly 30,000 people that pledged. They were at about 17 or 18,000 this year. Now in years kind of previous years, 2022 and 2021, they were much lower than that, right around the 10,000 number. Yeah, about 300 overall for our 4 stations, what Tammy said, which is not bad. I think people just aren't commuting as much right now, right? And a lot of the riders are just riding around, hitting breakfast stations, and then maybe going home to work. I I don't know. That's not a bad thing. We want them to get out and bike. I think the focus is just a little bit different, and the volume's never going to be quite the same as it was before. So recovering, but I'm not sure we'll ever get back to that. 500 riders that ride the Platte and stop at our station with Adams County again.
And I wonder if there can be like a way to market that so that it's not just bike to work. It's like, I don't really know what it would be called, but take a break from work. I don't know.
Yeah, in 2020 we did this thing DRCOG did called Bike to Wherever, and it
Oh, yeah.
was it was pretty good. With what they worked with what they had. It was a tough year, but it's yeah, we want to market it towards people. That's why we thought the gorilla signs were interesting. Just kind of hit people where they were, because a lot of people are just taking recreational rides in the morning, kind of the families in the group, and then the older, maybe retired folks that we still want them to bike and use them for errands and get out of their cars. So yeah, it's a challenge for sure from the marketing perspective.
Yeah. Well, thanks. It looks like it was a nice, successful event
It
regardless.
was.
Yeah.
We retired and get out there really early in the morning, 5:45, and then run it all the way till the evening. But that's bike to work day. It just takes a lot.
I was just gonna say it's interesting how bike to work day may or may not evolve, right? Whether or not it's bike to wherever or bike to work. I was just say it's interesting how we may want to just watch how the e-bike rebate program in Colorado and other areas and counties and municipalities, it seems like e-bikes and just bikes are growing in general, but bike to work is going down. So where's the nexus? Where do we meet? As the state rolls out its e-bike credit program, maybe that's something to piggyback onto as well. So I don't see bike to work being anywhere near the 2017, 2018 levels, but maybe it's something different than bike to work.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Boulder does bike and walk week, and they have for a long, long time. And maybe it's some quasi component of that. Part of the reason why bike to work day gets at my nerves sometimes is because it's on a Wednesday morning. It can be great for commuting, but for those that are interested in just kind of riding their e-bikes around and hitting some stations and having a fun time, kind of like the Viva streets in Denver, maybe a Saturday or Sunday makes some more sense on a weekend, so that more people could get out and try it. But it's a totally different focus at that point. So maybe it's a part of a larger week-long thing. I'm not exactly sure what it is, but it might become a bit of a bike week. I think with e-bike rebates, it's an interesting thought.
Is that a Dr. Cog conversation?
Yeah, I think it is. And Bike to Work Day, unfortunately, is scoped in the kind of federal grant funding, CMAQ funding they receive specifically. So I think that conversation becomes a little bit bigger if they have to like change the focus. I think they'd have to get the scoping correct from the feds and then go after it. As goofy as that sounds, they have some strings attached to that traditional Bike to Work Day. All right. I have three. Yeah, Bike to Work Day is an international day event. I don't think we'd ever get rid of it, right? It's just how do we tweak it and make it more inclusive. So I've come to you guys back in May. The last time we had a meeting was some of these grant updates. They were just on the horizon, but some things have come into focus for the organization, which are pretty exciting and will bump our budget up really significantly next year. Let me just go back so you're not reading this while I get into it. CMAQ funding is what our bread and butter is. It's the DRCOG Way to Go partnership funding. The scoping for the 2024 through 2026 cycle, it's always a 2-year cycle, is pretty much complete right now. As a way of heads up for the board, it is 20% increased heading into this next cycle. It's not really going to change a lot on our end. The way that we wrote our staffing during the last scope was allowing for a new staff member to come on only in 1 year of that 2-year cycle. And this year, that 20% essentially allows us to extend that person's scoped time over 2 years. So it's not really going to change a lot of the internal components about how we do our CMAQ work. It'll just allow that staff time to be extended over a longer period of time, which is nice to have. So that's the bread and butter. The rest of these grants are kind of on the top, so to speak, or extras that we have not really done much of in the past. TDM set-aside grant. This is a DRCOG TDM set-aside grant. This is the one where we're going to use data-driven approach to optimize the FlexRide services. Think about this as an extension of our 144th FlexRide grant kind of program, where we took the kind of need for a FlexRide or transit service that's workforce-based in an area and kind of made a FlexRide service to meet that need, as opposed to the other way around, where you just kind of draw this polygon around a geographic region and say, here's your FlexRide. You can ride within those boundaries. And it's call and ride all the time. So our idea here is to kind of take all of the northern area FlexRides in partnership with RTD with a nice analysis tool in the back end, and have Jean do some of this work when her grant wraps up from the 144th program, and kind of optimize the idea of the FlexRides in the north area as we move towards the SOP, where there's less fixed route transit, right? This is an opportunity to use FlexRides in a better way that could potentially serve more impactful VMT reductions around commuting and getting people to and from important appointments and hospitals and things like that. So that's the high level where it is in the process. It's in the DRCOG approval process. It was approved at the TAC, the Transportation Advisory Committee, on Monday, and it will move on to the next 2 phases of the process, the RAC and the board, next month. So mid next month, we'll find out if we get funding. I don't anticipate there'll be any issues. I haven't gotten any phone calls about any issues with this. So we're anticipating this will move forward with funding for that 2-year period, FY 24 and 25. Some project components on the right. I've already gone over those in the past, but they're relatively straightforward in kind of what I just said in so many words and a little bit more technical language. So that's the TDM set-aside grant update. Any questions about that? Really exciting opportunity for the org. Brings us forward in the project, a different scope to the FlexRide idea. So that's where we are.
Any questions or comments?
Cool. Thank you. Really exciting opportunity. A lot of big funding for us here. This is great. 2 more. The CDOT TMO support grant. This is the second round of their TMO support grant, where they essentially give us some funding that does not have to be locally matched, and it's not competitive. So all of the TMOs around the state get a certain chunk of money from CDOT that says, as long as you can scope this out into project terms, here's your funding. We'd love to see what the results are. We think you're doing great work. So that's the nexus of where this lands in CDOT's funding kind of formulas. And the budget for this upcoming year has been increased significantly. They essentially found $50,000 extra per TMO under the couch cushions somehow, and we're bumping it up from 70 to 125, or 75,000 to 125,000 for a 1-year period. We have 3 different components that we're trying to fund with this, because $125,000 is quite a bit of money for us. The first component is a multimodal community resources map piece. They're kind of customizable, digital, then potentially printable multimodal maps focused on kind of smaller geographic areas, like an employer's work site or kind of an area of a jurisdiction. Think about like an Amazon, where we could have customized digital multimodal map that shows all of their options that we could put up on a TV screen or print out or send out in an email that would be easily customized in the back end, so that when our team gets that request, we don't have to do it as a one-off every single time we have an employer asking for something like this. It's really just a TDM tool that's kind of brought into the 21st century that we think is a pretty nice implementation of some back-end GIS data. The second component we're going to fund with this is the North Metro Bike Map Phase 2. If you remember, we did Phase 1, which was essentially data gathering and talking to all the jurisdictions about what this might look like in the last phase, which wrapped up, last year, I guess. This next phase will really be the nitty gritty, where we get in the room together, look at all the data about all the trails and bike maps in the area, specifically regionally focused, and then just decide what goes on a graphically printed product, right? What do we include on that? Which trails get included? If they're not completed all the way, where there's a gap, how do we illustrate that? How can we capture that in a way that allows us to go after funding in the future for jurisdictions? A lot of big conversations happening there in the next year about completing it and ending it out with a digital and print version map. The third component, which is a little bit different, this is where we used the additional $50,000 that CDOT found under the couch cushions to fund something. We went after a CEO grant to fund some e-mobility hubs a few months ago, and we're not given funding for that. So we kind of recycled that project idea. It's one or more e-mobility hubs focused on a shared bike concept and maintenance trainee program. So think about our e-bike low income loan to own program right now. This is a scaled up, different scoped idea of the same thing, where people have access to e-bikes that are specifically lower income. It's just going to be a shared model as opposed to a loan to own model. We don't have exact locations of where that would be, but we think North Glen, kind of near EB Rains Park, is probably the starting point, and then we can spread out from there to places like Denver Premium Outlets or up north at Baseline. Just depends on the infrastructure and what fits the best. So we'll be able to do probably just one with some of this funding to start, and then I'll tell you how it might get scaled up here in a sec with a different grant opportunity. Any questions about the larger TMO support grant plan?
This all looks really great. Very good timing after our tour to Thornton as well for, bike map gaps and trails, and this is just all really good stuff. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, thanks. I think about it in this way. A lot of this work that we're doing here is to make our work on the outreach side easier and more effective. So if we have an opportunity to have a bike map or an e-mobility hub or an optimized flex ride, we can go out and say, hey, you should use this as opposed to your car in a more realistic way. If you don't have those options, telling someone to get out of their car can be even harder. So it just essentially helps eliminate barriers, is the way I'm looking at these grant funding that allows TDM to become more realistic in our region. All right. Lost my mouse. The last piece of this grant funding puzzle, this has all happened in the last 3 or 4 months. So a lot of movement here, a lot of funding, a lot of applications that we've all been working on putting together as a team. Is the RTD partnership grant, 2 of them. We've applied for 2. So this was a $2 million pot that RTD came out with that was open to TMOs and local jurisdictions around the metro, split into different districts, that basically said, here's a little bit of money to potentially fund a smaller transit service that supplements RTD's service on a community level. So that's the general idea. It's not a lot of money for if you think about how large RTD's district is, $2 million doesn't go very far in terms of funding transit. So we came out with 2 kind of interesting program ideas that we think fund mobility options in our region. And we don't know yet if these will be funded or not. The meeting is tomorrow afternoon, and I can report back on that. So The first is supporting the TDM set aside flex ride optimization program. So that big TDM set aside flex ride program I just talked about 2 slides ago. What we're doing is we're asking RTD to make the local match component or fund the local match component to that grant application. So that would roughly be $43,000 in terms of local match for that entire program. We're asking RTD to fund the entire local match, saying, this is our skin in the game. We believe this is an important work to do the flex ride optimization. We think it's interesting and innovative. You know, we have this local pot of money. This seems like a good use of that money. So that's the idea, is to get them to kind of pay that local match, and then there'll be kind of a local jurisdiction component in the background that's already been secured from Thornton, Westminster, and Broomfield that is serving as a backup. If RTD says no to this local match idea, then we'll get funding from local jurisdictions that essentially continues the program. So we do have a backup plan for local match. The second component that we applied for in terms of RTD partnership grant funding, which looks like a lot of money here, is supporting the TMO support grant e-mobility hub program. So when I said, I'll talk about the scaled up version of this in a minute, what we did is we essentially said, hey, RTD, we have this e-mobility hub program we're starting. We'd love to scale it up to more mobility hubs, have some not only e-bikes, but regular bikes, have some lockers, and have a kind of a maintenance trainee program with at-risk youth in the community. Here's a laundry list of all of those options and how much we think they would cost. We would love your thoughts on funding each one of those at level A, B, C, or all of the above. That all of the above option you're seeing here is $145,000-ish, which is quite a bit of money to ask for, but we think RTD has the opportunity to potentially kind of pick and choose what might fit within their partnership scope in terms of a funding puzzle, and then we can bump up the opportunity. So the way we're looking at RTD partnership grant on both of these is to supplement additional applications and kind of have RTD and CDOT and RTD and DRCOG leveraging off of each other to maximize the funding that we're bringing to the region for mobility options. So a little bit complicated, but we think the logic is sound, and we're excited about the opportunities that might be there for RTD partnership grant.
Carson, what's the timing of these grants, and does it go, what's the approval process? Does it go to the board, or is it just administratively approved?
Yeah, so this piece is just essentially administratively approved. So the board's already approved the kind of process where each sub-regional council gets roughly $600,000 to fund projects, and then it goes through kind of a number of different kind of processes to get there, but it's mostly administratively approved. Yeah.
Good.
Yeah, it's helpful.
So you think, I mean, it looks like we'll be able to move forward then and keep this service.
Yeah, 144 Flex Ride, we're getting positive indications it will definitely be funded through the end of the year. We have all the metrics that say it's successful. And then beyond then, RTD has to adopt it into their service plan and say, yes, we're going to continue this. In conversations with the back-end staff for this group, the indications are they'll be doing that. And it's not like it costs a crazy amount of money like a fixed route service. And we think that, the cost benefit analysis there is still really solid.
I think there's other things down the road that we'll have to address with RTD. I don't know if anybody, well, I definitely didn't go, but the Taylor Swift concert, I think, was a shining example of how we get left out compared to the other lines. The N line was the only line that didn't run after 10:30. And so while many people were able to get down to that concert, and there was also a Yankees game and a Cirque du Soleil concert or performance going on. So anyone that rode that train down didn't get back up because all of those events ended after the last train. And so it's ridiculous that we would have something like that, a service in our city, in our state, that doesn't provide return trip, but only on one line.
Yeah, it was not good.
And
It was
that
bad.
makes no sense. Like, you know that there's 3 events going on, and it was highly publicized that RTD was going to have extra service. So people took that option and then couldn't get home. And so if that's your experience, and why would you ever use that system again? Again, it's just another deterrent for using the transit system that we do have.
Yeah, I agree. I think we were just talking in our regional. Yesterday was transit day, which is a little bit half baked in terms of an idea, but we did participate and we're out at a couple of stations yesterday morning, our staff. But we were asked, what's been the most resonating way to use RTD in the zero fare months? And I think the number one answer from my perspective is just for recreation or personal use as
Yeah.
opposed to work use. I mean, I think the work is ticked up, but again, if you're not having a good recreational experience, why would you take it regularly back and forth to work? It's speaking to the same point you are. Just can we make sure, Jessica, you won't be at NATA tomorrow, right?
No,
You'll be
I'll be,
gone. Let's just I'll put a note to make sure that someone asked that. I'll put a bug in someone's ear tomorrow.
yeah, because otherwise I was going to launch into a giant tirade about it because it's just ludicrous. Like, so all those people took the train down, the free train, and then had to spend, $150 to get back home on an Uber.
And probably took forever, I'm sure.
Yeah,
Totally
Jan,
agree.
they were stuck on Federal for an hour and a half.
Totally agree. It'll be hard to replace your voice at NATA tomorrow too, Jessica. So I don't know how I won't be able to be there either, but I wouldn't be called on it anyway.
You can think about what I would be saying.
I know we can channel it somehow. Carson, I have to hop off here. But one question I had is so with fares, couple of movements with fares right now. So obviously fare free July, August. Assuming there's going to be some reports and information about that. Do we know any sort of latest updates on timing on the fare reduction? And then is the Flex Ride, I can't remember, I'm embarrassed. I can't remember if the Flex Ride has any fare attached to it, and if that's also related to the fare reduction study as well.
Yeah, good question. So they just approved the new fare reduction after the 18th month process last night at the board meeting, at RTD's board meeting. It will be implemented, as I understand it, in early 2024. I don't know the exact date of that. I don't know if it's January 1st or some other date. But there's some details that have come out about what exactly that means. I think it's $275 is a flat fare now for just a one-way kind of ticket, and then there's obviously a day pass which has been brought down as well. I think the most impactful piece for us is that the monthly pass has been brought down to $88, and since there's no regional or local distinction between fares, that number has been more than halved for a monthly pass for regional users, most of those in our area. And that's going to be a big selling point for us. It'll also totally change the EcoPass pricing structure, which will bring that down a ton, which will help us with employers, especially with the tax credit. There is a fare attached to Flex Rides. It's a traditional fare. So if you take it across 2 zones, you got to pay a regional fare. But if you take it across 1 zone, like from Wagon Road to Amazon, local fare. But now all that's going to be totally eliminated. Everything's going to be $275 one way, unless you buy a day pass, which is a little bit more.
How long does
Gotcha.
75 last? Is there a time limit on it again?
I think it's a 3-hour thing, but the details that I have not read all of the details about that. To be honest with you, I actually just sent an article around this morning to my team that made it onto KDVR. Here, let me just drop it in the chat so you can pull it up into your browser if you want with a few more details. I just don't want to get my numbers wrong and say something that's not true.
Thanks. I think this is something we need to just watch and be mindful of. And speaking of just outreach and awareness opportunities with, bike to wherever, and to Jessica's point about, having service late at night. I mean, that is a steal to get to downtown and back, starting January for a little over $5, right?
Yep.
That's a steal. That's great.
That's where it should be. That's a
and
carrot.
hopefully that starts to generate the ridership and awareness and momentum behind more service at night. Because Jessica, same thing. I take my family down to Union Station all the time for Rockies games and ice cream, etc. But we are constantly monitoring when the last bus is, when we can make sure we get back. It's a hassle. So hopefully the fare reduction has some sort of component in that. And I think we should just watch that fare reduction and see how that impacts our outreach and our awareness and our programming. I think that could potentially be a game changer. So
I agree.
let's
I'm
take off
keenly,
all apologies.
so yeah,
Actually,
I'll get out one point as Nathan hops off. I'm keenly focused on utilizing July and August zero fare to potentially make some groundswell for employees to ask their employers for EcoPass or monthly passes. When they have been riding for a couple of months for free, we think there's an opportunity to capture some data, and we've been trying to do that around some employees saying, hey, I've been riding this for free. It's great. Would you please consider giving me a monthly pass or consider an EcoPass next year when the pricing comes down? We think there's, yeah, like Nathan's saying, there's some good opportunity there to really improve our outreach.
hey,
Well,
Kyle.
that's all I've got. Yeah, hey, thanks for joining.
I didn't see everybody on there, actually. I couldn't see Tammy either. I see you all now.
Sorry, the PowerPoint view can be a little strange. Chair, I don't really have anything else on the agenda, so to speak, other than to say in August, I'll have a report ready for kind of the wrap up stages of our 144th Flex Ride and the last couple of pieces we're going to put together for that and what it looks like moving forward. There's been some good movement in the background there, but we're not quite ready this month to get into that. But I do, now that Nathan has left, unfortunately, we lost our quorum, so I won't be able to do minutes or treasurer's reports. But if we have a couple of seconds, I will just pop back and show you the July treasurer's report just to show two things that I think are really important, if that's okay.
Yep.
So the first thing I'd like to show you is the RTD 144th Flex Ride local match LAC transfer that you see here in terms of a deposit into our checking account, $88,252. And then the 3 checks that were written here at the bottom for our Q1, 2, 3, and 4, all of 2022 local match components were all written out. So we had our savings account, which essentially acts as a holding account for those local match funds, transferred those into the checking account, wrote out 3 checks, one for each one of the quarters so that we could keep nice clean accounting with RTD. And we've made good on all of our local match through 2022. We still have 2023 January through September to pay to them, and we're pretty well on track to getting that fully paid out. But the second point I wanted to point out is I still do have roughly $11,000 out there in local match funding for the Flex Ride. That includes Denver Premium Outlets, which we're in the process with, Amazon, which has been a pain, but we're in the process with, the hospital, St. Anthony North Hospital. There may be an opportunity with Centura to potentially fund at least a portion of the local match component for theirs, even though their budget is apparently crazy. And then I'm still working with local jurisdictions. We had a bit of an additional component that was given to each one of the jurisdictions that kind of uses the Flex Ride the most because our operating costs went up. So that all adds up to roughly $11,000. And once we add that into the savings account balance, we'll be nice and healthy heading into the last few payments in September. And we should continue to allow for $15,000 to $20,000 worth of buffer in our savings account. And I'm not going to allow it to get much lower than that, just so that we have some in there moving forward. So I just wanted to point out the fact that I've been talking about making these payments for 144th Flex Ride for a long time, and Karen did before me, but I finally wrote the checks and we started to make good on those commitments we made back in 2019. So exciting, but scary and important for you guys to be aware of.
Is the Orchard at all participating in that?
The Orchard has been
Horrible.
They just don't respond. If someone has a great contact there, I'd be more than willing to do it. Renee over there was amazing for a long time, and we did a lot of bike to work day work with them. COVID hit, and they essentially just said, "We're done. We're not really going to have the budget to do anything anymore." So I'm not sure. I have not been able to get in touch with anybody over there to bump that up. And same deal with the Grove with Max over at the Grove. They just haven't been able to find the right mix to make it kind of quote unquote worth it for them. But we are pushing with DPO, Amazon, and St. Anthony North.
Okay. When I get back, let's chat about the Orchard.
Okay.
I don't, and maybe the Grove. I don't really know anybody over there, but maybe somebody else does.
Yeah, every little penny counts, right? Right now, it doesn't have to be 6,250, which is what we're asking for the other three guys, and they've agreed to. But anything,
Well,
even it's
service, so they should participate.
that's what they agreed to, right? Back in that nice conference room in late 2019, when we all had them all in the room, and they said, "Yes, we want this service. Yes, we're willing to pay for it." And then COVID hit, and yeah, everybody's handshake agreements went sideways, and that's what I've been fighting with for the last year and a half.
No, I get it. Everybody had financial issues, but it's still a service. And I think with the, the regional air quality findings and continued effort to put transit at the top of the list and remove, single occupancy vehicles, why wouldn't they want to participate so that when that day comes, because it will, that there will be another stick versus a carrot, then they can actually say that they have participated some way.
Yeah, it's frustrating, right? I heard from Thornton is doing a kind of transit study. And in that meeting, Adam Kruger from the economic development team kind of passed along an economic development guy from Amazon that represents them out in the West, who, when they interviewed him, he said, transit is the number one thing we need. Recruitment and retention is the number one opportunity we have in terms of economic development. If we can't recruit and retain employees, even at the lowest levels, the kind of associate levels at Amazon, it doesn't work. And the best way to get them there and have them stay there is to have reliable transit. So I capitalized on that, hearing that and talked to the guy on the phone. Unfortunately, Amazon is just a bit of a bull in a china shop. They were more interested in going directly to the top of RTD and demanding service when it's just not the way to do it. So
did they have any positive response to that?
No, it was an interesting conversation. I mean, he's going to help us get the funding we need for local match from the DIN 3 team specifically, which is great. It's just it's an interesting conversation. I hear the same thing from Denver Premium Outlets, right? They think they can, if we come in and bring funding, or if we come in and demand it, they're just going to bring a transit service. And the problem is you got to prove it to the service planners at RTD that there's a demand and there's a need and there's enough density and the schedules work out before you can even walk down that road. It takes a long time to get there. And that's, since there's been so much turnover, the people in that conference room back in 2019 got that, but these people don't get it. So it's me and Gene and team trying to resell that message pretty constantly.
You need to go to the NADA meetings and start sitting in. And that's where we had those conversations.
Yep.
That's where we had that kind of effort. And so if we can get people to go back to that and see for themselves, hey, RTD is in the room. You're talking to the board of directors that make all the decisions. So why wouldn't you go to that meeting? If you think Deborah Johnson makes all the decisions, then I don't think you understand anything about RTD.
It's the board. They make the funding calls, right? And then the service planners make all the right. Bus calls and then send it to the board. And it's hard to argue with them when the system is so complicated.
Like we've all been banging our head against the brick wall for years. If it was that easy, we would have had it by now.
Yeah, we would have just paid for a service with each one of our little special districts and it would have been there, but it's not that easy. Anyway, that's me complaining for a moment.
Well, I guess
that's all I have.
Minutes of our lives back then, 16 minutes.
Yeah, I think it's exciting
Carson.
to see. Yeah, hey Craig.
Sorry. Just a question on the e-mobility hubs.
Mhm.
Are we looking at cargo e-bikes for that? And, you know, in addition to just regular e-bikes or bikes? Because I think that's key to getting people to use the bike service, is the ability to actually do their errands and have the ability to pick up groceries or do shopping trips.
Yeah, really great point, Craig. I think the number one barrier behind infrastructure in terms of using an e-bike for any, or even just a normal bike for anything, is the ability to have cargo on that bike and the ability to move it around. So yes, we're looking at cargo e-bikes. I think we're looking at kind of both like a traditional rack system on the back, and potentially a basket. We don't know exactly which one we might go with. Depends on pricing, depends on what the demand is. But I think yes, we're keenly aware of that issue. Good question. Well, we'll come back in August with a 144 Flex Ride update, and I'll probably have a lot more information about where we are in these grant processes. Assuming we get most of these, which we think we will, we're in the 20% increase on our CMAQ budget. Our budget is basically going to double, if not close to triple, for next year. So it'd be exciting times for TDM, and Smart Commute's headed in the right direction, and we're happy to have it going that way.
Sounds good.
Cool.
All right. Well, thank you. Thanks, everyone. Have a good weekend. I'll see you next month, Carson.
All right. Sounds good. Thank you, everybody, for joining. I know it's vacation time.
But
Bye.